Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, October 5th, 2023. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Clerk Soul, please.
President Pollock.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Clarity.
Here.
Trustee Marshazga.
Here.
Manager Francis.
Here.
Attorney Pickrell.
Here.
Also present Clerk Soul.
Thank you. President's report is first on our agenda, and I'd like to start by saying a few words about Joanne Cozy. As I'm sure the entire Riverside community is aware, Joanne passed away over this past weekend. Joanne was an extraordinary individual who dedicated her time, energy, and passion to our village. Joanne was a true embodiment of selflessness and dedication to making Riverside a better place. Joanne was the epitome of a devoted volunteer. She tirelessly dedicated countless hours to the village of Riverside, especially when it comes to Friends of the Fourth, the 4th of July Parade, and other organizations within the village. Her enthusiasm for Riverside was infectious. She inspired others to help and contribute to the community. As we recognize and honor her legacy, we as a community should continue to embrace the values of community service and kindness, just as Joanne did. I think that Joanne epitomizes what Riverside's all about: residents who love their community and who are willing to give their time and their dedication to the village and to the community. Thank you, Joanne, and blessings to you and your family. Next on the agenda is the manager's report. Manager Francis.
Thank you. I have a couple of items this evening to report on. First of all, some exciting news. Congratulations to Public Works and the Police Department on receiving IRMA's 2023 Innovative Risk Management Award. This is only awarded to one community or entity within the IRMA risk pool. IRMA awards this to one of their members that have adopted a program or technology that successfully addresses emerging risks within the public sector and has the ability to be adopted by other members. They have their IRMA Summit next week, and so the award will be presented, and both Director Buckley and Director Tabb will be providing a presentation to the IRMA membership. Both the Public Safety and Public Works departments have demonstrated an increased regard to safety as it pertains to mental health and also fall hazards at the workplace. IRMA has been diligently working to raise awareness of these issues within the membership. Therefore, they see immediate value in these programs that Riverside has implemented to mitigate loss and share how to replicate such programs into other members' organizations. So that's very exciting. Congratulations, and congratulations to your teams who helped implement this. Director Tabb's program is still in progress at the moment, but IRMA felt it was very important to acknowledge the fall protection program that they're working to put in place. I want to give a brief update related to the Shenstone project. The new 8-inch water main has been installed, pressure tested, and chlorinated. The new 36-inch diameter sewer is approximately 50% complete. Crews will begin installing the public portion of the water services this weekend, with the private side beginning towards the end of the month. The concrete work on the curbs, aprons, and sidewalks will begin in the next couple of weeks, followed by the roadway itself. Project completion is still scheduled for mid-November. However, the scheduling of the new water services will be directly impact that timeline. The village recognizes the impact on residents and appreciates the cooperation during this whole project period, and thanks everyone for dealing with the temporary inconvenience, because long-term, this is a huge project for that area. And finally, Assistant Village Manager Monroe finished the new renters guide that is currently on the website, can be translated into other languages. Additionally, when we're doing the inspections for apartments or other rental properties in which the code requires the different inspections, Inspector Krupa will be providing those renters the renter information. He'll have them both in English and Spanish, and so residents will have access to that information. Even if they've been a renter for many, many years, just having that as a resource and having that folder and that information will be helpful to Riverside residents. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you, Manager Francis. Next on the agenda is resident comments, non-agenda items. Seeing no one in the audience, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Clerk Soul, please read the consent agenda.
Approve voucher list of bills October 5th, 2023. Approve Village Board of Trustees lead service line and water main replacement project public hearing minutes September 21st, 2023. Approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes September 21st, 2023. Review and file quarterly purchase order report. Review and file Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting minutes August 23rd, 2023. Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting minutes September 15th, 2023. And Historical Commission regular meeting minutes July 17th, 2023. A resolution authorizing the sale or disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside, and a resolution waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the village manager to enter into various purchase orders for fiscal year 2023.
Does anyone have any reason to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Clerk Soul, will you please call the roll? And I understand that I'll need to vote on this as well.
President Pollock should vote on this one as well.
Okay. Trustee Evans?
Aye.
I'm sorry. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'm sorry. I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Evans, second by Trustee Marshazga. Please read the roll.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
President Pollock?
Aye.
Trustee Clarity?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Department, board, and commission reports. Are there any department, board, or commission reports this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to pending business. Discussion regarding a proposal for an additional business district within the village's central business district. Director Johns.
Good evening. In May of 2022, the Village Board discussed the possibility of an additional business district located within the Central Business District. The board remanded this topic to the Economic Development Commission, who tabled this item for 1 year as they felt that 2022 was not the appropriate time. The Economic Development Commission discussed this item at their last meeting and still did not feel that the additional 1% tax would be a good idea at this point. They did express interest in a dedicated funding source for improvements to the Central Business District, but did not have a specific request for that at this time. The Riverside Chamber of Commerce also recently discussed this, and there was positive feedback from RMARTS that they would not have been able to make the improvements without the assistance grants that were eligible through the Business District program. There have been changes in the Central Business District since this initial conversation with Kane McKenna, including the decrease in vacant properties in the Central Business District, which could potentially limit the blight determination, which is required for the additional 1% tax. Would the board like staff to pursue this item any further at this time?
As for any discussion or comments or questions from trustees?
Are we confident that the Chamber of Commerce feedback is enough for us? So, I feel like we haven't really reached out to the business owners that would be impacted. I don't know if I have enough information.
Okay.
My position hasn't changed since we discussed this last year. I
I'm hesitant to put a new tax on our business district and on our residents. We have seen certainly an increase in business in the central business district. We have lots of new businesses in town, but we certainly have lost some as well, and I'm in alignment with EDC. I don't think it's the right time.
And I'm in agreement with Trustee Clarity on this. I think if the Economic Development Commission has received feedback, additional feedback from any businesses that went into their determination, that we should be respectful of that. I think if there's additional density planned for our central business district area, which I understand is on the horizon, it may change the picture in the future. But at this time, I think the imposition of an extra tax is not what the businesses in the central area need.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like the consensus is not to move forward with this. Trustee Evans did bring up a comment that was in the written staff report that the Chamber of Commerce actually seemed to indicate some openness to this. So I guess what I would suggest is that we can just do this by consensus, or do we need a motion and a vote?
No, it's just getting a sense.
So if the board would agree, I would say the consensus is that we're not going to move forward, but I would suggest at the same time, we send a message to the chamber saying that at any time, if they feel like this is something they want to see us do, they can organize themselves and come to us at any time and ask us to proceed with this or to reconsider it.
Okay.
It's always available to us. So.
I just have a question. Is it always available to us, or does there need to be a certain threshold of vacant properties?
To enact the 1% sales tax, the area needs to prove blight. Vacant properties is one of the effects or one of the attributes that goes into determining blight.
Yeah, and to clarify, by saying that we could move forward at any time we could do that research to see if we qualify. We don't know if we would qualify or not, but if there's support from the business community, at any time we can revisit it and do that research and determine if we even qualify.
Thanks for the clarification.
So with that, we'll move on. Unless anyone has anything else to add, we will go with that consensus. New business, announcement of public hearing for 2024 budget ordinance, Director Johns.
The village will hold a public hearing for the 2024 budget on October 19th, directly before the village board meeting. There will be notification appearing in the October 11th edition of the Riverside Brookfield Landmark, and at that time, a draft budget will be available for public inspection at the front counter of Village Hall.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on the announcement of the public hearing for the 2024 budget ordinance? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve or do we need a motion? No.
Just the announcement.
The announcement's been made, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Discussion of recommended fiscal year 2024 budget. Director Johns.
Good evening. Tonight I've provided for you a proposed 2024 budget. The board started this process with a presentation of a 10-year capital improvement plan and the 5-year financial forecast in August and September of this year. Staff is happy to present a balanced general fund budget for the board's review tonight. This budget and the library budget will be available at the front desk for inspection starting October 19th. Wanted to just bring a couple highlights to your attention tonight. Staff has been conservative with revenue projections for this year, including the 2022 draft tax levy report was released by Cook County earlier this week and unfortunately was not able to be used to help determine the property tax figures in this draft budget. Although the draft general fund levies for fiscal year 23 will be approximately $19,000 or 0.5% less than what's projected in this budget. Those changes will be made in the final budget presented for adoption. Also included in this budget includes sales tax estimates from Sherman-Williams and Starbuds based on the information provided to the village. A budget division in the general fund has been added for C4 initiatives with an expense budget of $550. Based on the last meeting's conversation, the recreation division has been moved into a separate fund. And due to retirement within the police department, one of the additional officers assisting with transition has been removed. All department heads are here tonight to answer any questions you may have in the draft budget.
Thank you, Director Johns. Questions from the trustees?
You mentioned a very modest allocation to C4. Does that include staff time?
No, just expenses.
Do we have an estimate of staff time on projects like that?
So I would estimate approximately 10% of Assistant Village Managers Monroe's time is spent. So approximately, I mean, each week can vary depending on what's happening with C4, but approximately probably 4 to 6 hours a week. If there's a lot going on with C4, then it's probably closer to 6 hours.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Assistant Village Manager.
Assistant Manager Monroe?
I was just going to also note that we put into the CIP proposal an allocation for a consultant to help with some of the work for application of C4 practices and priorities in the next year, and then kind of a plan outlined for additional work in the future.
Trustee
I
Evans?
just wanted to add that Trustee Marshaska spends many, many hours working on C4 without any pay. She's not in this, she's not getting a salary, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge Ashley's support too.
Thank you.
We have, it's not just the two of us. We have a wonderful, very talented group working on this, including Trustee Evans. You know, the one thing about being an ad hoc committee is that we do have the flexibility in our meeting times, which makes it great for talented professionals to, you know, just work at their convenience and move things along. But I am grateful to all of them, and we will officially acknowledge everyone when we roll out the plan, hopefully early next year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the budget? And no action is needed on this, correct? For discussion purposes only at this time. So we'll move on to item 10C, Riverside Sesquicentennial Celebration. This is something that Manager Francis and I have been talking about. The Village of Riverside will celebrate its 150th anniversary in the summer of 2025. Trustees Marshaska and Gallegos have already done some work in preparing for this, but I wanted to bring this to the board formally to get your input on how we want to proceed, primarily how you prefer to see the village's involvement in this process. And I'll turn it over to Manager Francis.
Thank you. So some of the questions that staff has as we do the budget is, while 2024, there won't be necessarily a cost to purchase items, it's more of the planning period. And so whether or not the board wants to have a modest supplies budget to kind of ramp up to get ready for 2025. Right now, how C4 functions is actually a working group. And so, we never have more than 2 board members there because we don't want to violate Open Meetings Act. And so the board, and Trustee Marshazga is great about giving a monthly report as to what's going on with that working group. And so then then you have greater flexibility to have those different meetings and to do that all via Zoom to get that feedback. And so that's an option. An option is to create an ad hoc committee where individuals are appointed and you create minutes and you have a staff liaison. Not to say you couldn't have a staff liaison for a working group. Or you could also, an additional alternative is the village board could decide to ask respective boards and or commissions to contribute something as it relates to Riverside's 150th. Parks and Rec does all of our event planning for the village and does an amazing job. And so, incorporating Riverside's 150th into existing different activities and events and expanding upon that. If we're going to expand and have more events, trying to get more sponsorships, and so Parks and Rec would work directly in tandem with that. And so just trying to figure out what's some of the thoughts and vision of the village board. Are we going to look to have special exclusive Riverside 150 merchandise? These are just some of the things that I kind of put down. Frequency of whether it's the working group, the ad hoc committee, or the individual boards or commissions doing a check-in and letting the village board, here's kind of what we have on the agenda and the list for 2025. So those are just high level to allow the board to start discussing some of those items and get some direction.
So I think the first decision we need to make is how the governance of this process, meaning what type of group or committee do we want overseeing this process? Now, as I understand it, there's three choices that we could consider. There may be others, but three that we've identified. And for purposes of discussion, let's use these terms for each. One is what we currently have, which is a working group. Just for sake of discussion and to distinguish these things, I'll call it a working group. And that's similar to what we're doing with C4, where it's just a couple of trustees attend and organize outside of the realm of the village government, basically, to an extent. The advantages of that, I think, partly is flexibility. They're not subject to that process. It is not subject to the Open Meetings Act, not subject to posting agendas and taking minutes and all that. Another option would be to assign this to an existing village committee, EDC, Parks and Rec, or whatever. The third option would be to create an ad hoc committee, a formal village committee that would be subject to Open Meetings Act, would have agendas, et cetera. As I understand it, the budgeting and the staffing can be the same no matter what avenue we go. The advantages, I think in my mind, I'll just stop there and get input from you before I share my thoughts. So any comments about that or any thoughts, questions? Trustee Evans.
For the work group strategy, I think Trustee Marshazga would agree that, so yes, you would have Trustee Gallegos and Trustee Marshazga, but also you need to find volunteers. And that isn't always easy. For C4, we do finally, it's been quite a while, but you have managed to get a really good, interesting, inspiring group. But we'd have to come up with new volunteers for a work group. That's just something to consider.
Trustee Marshazga.
I would like to just draw a little bit of a distinction between the C4 process and what this would be, the sesquicentennial planning. The primary difference is that for sesquicentennial, it's year-long series of events that are going to require, at least based on the preliminary discussions I've been having with Trustee Gallegos, expenditure of village funds, significant. So I think for the sake of just full, complete transparency, and as well as giving anyone on this board who would like to participate in the sesquicentennial planning the opportunity to do so, that the third option has more, it has greater transparency and offers more opportunity for all the trustees to be involved.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for Bob. So if we created an ad hoc committee and you had 3 board members, would you have to, it's hard, would you have to publicize it as a dual meeting?
Correct, yeah.
So you'd have to know in advance that it's a joint meeting of the ad hoc committee and the village board of trustees?
Correct.
Okay.
And that would have to be publicized, minuted, documented, incur staff time and a council time.
I don't think we would need much legal
No.
on
I
that,
would-
but staff time, yes, yeah. Which staff time would be allocated either way.
It's free, right?
I think the staff time is important here, but it's the same, and unless we go a tack I didn't think we would want to go, which is to not devote staff time to it. The choice of the 3 organizing structures is, staff time's not affected by that. Staff will be able to contribute and manage this process under any of the scenarios. My thinking, and I've gone back and forth on this in my mind as I've thought about this, but I think Trustee Marshazga makes some very good points about transparency and I mean, this is something we want people to know about. We want this to be as broadcast loudly as we're preparing this to get input. And so I'd lean toward that, forming an ad hoc committee, appointing specific people to that committee, including whatever trustees might be interested, plus maybe people from someone from EDC, for example, or someone from Parks and Rec, representing the cross-section of the community to be a part of this group. And of course, the public would be able to participate as well. Any other thoughts or comments or concerns? So is there a consensus to proceed in that manner?
Yes.
If so, ad hoc committee? Yes. If so, what I will do is I will talk to individual trustees here the next couple of weeks, find out who's interested. I think we all kind of know a couple of trustees who are already involved, and I'll certainly reach out to them. But other trustees, if you're interested in being involved under this format, you could be as involved as you want to be or not. And then we can also talk about who we would appoint. I assume I would nominate people to an ad hoc committee like that, and subject to advice and consent of the board. So I would, at an upcoming meeting, I will come back with final details with some nominations for the committee. Does that seem right? All in agreement? Very good. Anything else?
One item, given that we're handling it in that particular manner, staff will create a nominal $1,000 budget for Riverside 150 for just next year for the planning pieces. And then that'll give us a figure of how much we're going to spend then in 2025.
And thank you. And I would add, in speaking to the cameras now, the people watching from home, this is a big deal. This is the 150th anniversary of a landmark village. We are, in the history of the United States, this is a very important place. and we're celebrating 150 years. And I'm hoping that, and I know, I'm not hoping, I know the community will get behind this. All the various organizations out there that we have that do such great work in our village, we want them involved in this and participating. This will be a pretty big party for the village. Looking forward to it, so thank you all. Next on the agenda, item 10D, ordinance amending the village code concerning access to the village's water service and the registration and inspection of multifamily rental properties within the village of Riverside. Assistant Village Manager Monroe.
Good evening. So this item before you is an ordinance to consider changes to language in several aspects of our code. I'll designate exactly what those changes are. This item began because staff has learned a couple of lessons in the 2 years approximately that we've been managing our rental registration program for residential properties. This includes properties with 3 units that are rented, right? So 3 units or greater that have rent available to rent. There are a couple of things that we've run into, a few complications at times about a lack of notice for arriving for an inspection. Nobody's there, they forgot, they didn't give us appropriate notice and we showed up anyway. Whatever the case may be, we have some challenges where people don't register in a set period of time. For instance, if we've identified a new property that should be participating in the program and they lag in finishing their registration for the program. And so we wanted to address this with clarification within the language. And so a couple of those things are just related to what I had explained. We've set a 30-day period where they should register a property within receiving written notice of registering for the property. There's a set timeline now. Each year we start the registration. It runs from January to December. We'll be sending out renewal information in November this year, which would indicate all the changes that I'm going to describe yet today. There is a change to clarification about our fees charged. In those times where an owner or occupant fails to provide a 24-hour notice, has chronically reschedules appointments, so we continue to save a time for them, and then they continue to push it back and push it back and push it back. We wanted some type of clarification in language to allow us to charge a reinspection fee for that purpose. We've reduced the notice for scheduling appointments. The original ordinance had given 21 days. It seems to be a lot to do that. So 14 days is what we're requesting to move to. So 2 weeks notice with a 7-day notice for the tenants. We also can set an inspection in fewer than 14 days if there's consent from the owner, the tenant, and the village has availability. So there's also cases where there's a vacant unit in a building and someone chooses to ask us, they say, can you stop by tomorrow? And we technically are supposed to provide more notice than that by ordinance. So we're giving ourselves a little flexibility. We're also changing the pronouns to non-gendered pronouns. And finally, the biggest change is based on our council's review of the original ordinance. We wanted to strengthen our authority to enter the premises in the first place. Tying that to the village's provision of water services was the most appropriate way to do that. There are instances where we've found that there are improper water connection or a concern about backflow devices or a lack of a backflow device, those sorts of circumstances. And so we feel it's appropriate to include language within the code sections. They're including 865, so related to water service and our ability to inspect those areas. 866 is the access to premises. The 4119 is our rental inspection and registration ordinance section. And then finally, we also have a code section approved a little more than a year ago about multifamily dwelling common area inspections, which this would also apply to. So if you have any questions about the program, about the proposed ordinance, you may ask me any questions, as well as Attorney Pickrell.
Questions, comments, thoughts on any of that?
I'll make a
Trustee
comment.
Clarity.
I would only comment for the benefit of the public that this was never intended to generate revenue on behalf of the village. That is not the goal. We are certainly trying to maintain something as close to cost neutral as possible. And so while I know that fees generate frustration, this seems inherently reasonable to me, understanding that there are costs involved if we show up and someone who said they'll be there won't be there. And so it seems reasonable and consistent with our goal here to protect the health and welfare of our residents.
Thank you. Trustee Evans?
It also aligns with just the trend of charging people when you don't show up. It happens, if you want to get your hair cut and you don't show up. It happens if you go to if you don't show up at your doctor's appointment. It's just starting to become much more common.
I just have a quick question about the provision that says that you can schedule with fewer than 14 days' notice with express written or verbal consent. Given the costs that are involved with showing up for an inspection and then having the person not be there, is there a way to document? I mean, procedurally, do you have a documentation?
Yes, so typically the inspector or whoever, the inspector or other staff will notify me and say, well, we have another cancellation. I'll just know when the inspector shows back up at, or at our door here. But we have it in our system that we're scheduling, within our software, essentially, and that's noted. So we will have a tracking as well for the reason or purpose if we know what that is and how frequent. I will mention that as part of the ordinance that should be noted as well. The ordinance itself requires us to notify our residents of the change. So we're going to be publishing that in full in the newspaper because it does relate to our water services. So and the provision of those services. So we want to make sure people are adequately informed. We are also going to send a notice through the water bills so that people are also informed. And as I said, we will also be providing notice to the property owners engaged in the program so that everyone knows what those changes are and the impacts or implications where if they do not comply with certain aspects of the program, including providing access for those inspections over a set parameters. So if we give notice and they don't comply, then additional penalties would be incurred. So we'll let everybody know of the changes.
Additional questions or comments? If not, I'd ask for a motion. Considering where were we? Motion on an ordinance amending the village code concerning access to the village's water service and the registration and inspection of multifamily rental properties within the village of Riverside.
I would make a motion to approve as proposed.
Motion by trustee Marshazga, second.
I'll second.
Second by trustee Clarity. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Clerk Soul, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Clarity?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Aye.
President Pollock?
Aye. Motion is approved. Ordinance is approved. Motion approved 4-0. Next on the agenda is trustee reports and cross-community climate collaborative updates. Trustee Marshowska, do you have any updates on the C4 initiatives?
We are working through final recommendations with backing up outlines and data. So there's a lot of good work being done right now. We will have more to report on that at the end of the month. However, contemporaneously, last Sunday, September 29th, was the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. For those who are not familiar with that, wasting food and sending it to a landfill generates potent greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change, and it also costs us money. Quick statistic on that, the average American family of four threw out $1,600 a year in produce alone last year. So that's significant and something that we felt that our residents should be aware of. So this month, we'll be sending out some facts about food waste to our residents via both e-flash and social media. We will also be sharing a registration link for a free webinar that's going to be held on October 18th called Serving Up Sustainability, which will be focused on the reduction of food waste for everyone from home chefs to commercial kitchens. There will definitely be more on that topic, so stay tuned.
Thank you, Trustee. I want to add that 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I attended the Illinois Municipal League Conference, and there was a session on presented by the C4 group, led by the village presidents of Oak Park, River Forest, and Broadview. And I was very impressed. We are associated with a very good group of people. The work they're doing is important, and I think that we'll see definite benefits from this process and being a member of this process. I look forward to seeing this going forward. Any other trustee reports? Seeing none, we do not have a need for executive session, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to adjourn by Trustee Evans, second. Second by Trustee Marshowska. Clerk Soul, please call the roll.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
President Pollock?
Aye.
Trustee Clarity?
Aye.
Trustee Marshowska?
Meeting adjourned.